Pennie Scott has been gardening with nature for more than 50 years, growing many of her own foods, including raising pigs, dairy cows, ducks, and extensive vegetable gardens. Originally training as a naturopath, Pennie joined the Organic Regenerative Investment Cooperative, easy to say, ORI Co-op, last year, collaborating with almost 300 organic grain growers across Australia, enabling them to be profitable farmers and engaging with the millions of Australians who want transparency in their food supply systems. Let's try this out and see if we work. Pennie, are you receiving us loud and clear?
Loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about, because I'll start with a sort of a roundabout question, because when I pop into a supermarket and I head to the organic section of that supermarket, it looks a bit sad. Is there something that supermarkets can do to make their organic part, that's supposedly better for you, better looking?
We've got no idea when those foods have been picked, plucked and packed and then transported how many thousands of kilometres to the supermarkets, because their centralised distribution system requires, and I live near Orange, which is a very well-known place for growing apples. So if you want to buy apples from Orange, you go to a local orchard that sells them direct. But if you buy them through Coles or Woolworths, those apples have been trucked from Orange to the distribution centre in Sydney and then brought back to the Coles and Woolworths supermarkets in Orange, which is totally nonsense. But it means that the integrity of those products is compromised because they're in storage for such a long time and transport. So I don't think supermarkets are the best presenters of organic food. And in fact, it might be a deliberate reason they have them looking limp and horrible because of the food miles they've travelled. But when you're buying directly from the farmer's market, you can look that person in the eye and say, oh, now what variety is this? And when was it picked? Has it been in cold storage? I'm referring to apples and pears in this particular one. And you can have that conversation. And while we have so much discussion around shortages of food, one of the best things to do is love your farmer and know them well, because that emotional connection between you two is going to mean you're going to get a preference for when there might be food shortages.
Tell us about the actual organisation itself, because Jen was a producer and business partner, was very excited about this, and I think it's just absolutely amazing. Tell us about the organisation and the stakeholders involved.
We're very proud to have 300 plus grain growers, organic grain growers, as our members. And we collaborate with them so it's a member-owned organisation as a cooperative, which is equitable and transparent. Two most important characteristics of a company, of an organisation. And they grow their grains and they set their price for what they want for their grains. And so ORI CO pays 35% of their crop value once it's in the bin. And I love your visuals there going into the silo. So there's no other business model for growers in Australia that does that. There's no grain grower that sets their own price if they're in the commodity market, because by definition, they're price takers, not price makers. But within the organic section, our growers are price makers. And that is such a difference in your business model and what you can actually manage during the year financially, with cash flow in particular. And because the inputs are not reliant on imports, as we're seeing now with urea and superphosphate, which are coming from the Middle East, there's a huge perturbation of supply, but of course that is pushing the prices up. But our organic growers use made in Australia biological fertilisers, which are all about improving your capacity and fertility.
Um, if you look at the current situation, which is about to get worse and worse and worse, and we had the fuel crisis, which is adding now to our food security. What needs to be done?
We got 3 hours?
You never know with what's happening at the moment. You might be still here in 3 hours.
We might be. First of all, we need to have eaters and consumers playing a bigger part in our food security. I actually say we have very deep food insecurity, and that is from at least the past 15 years when I did a research project interrogating whether or not Australia could feed itself in the times of a pandemic, natural disasters, or terrorist activity. And the structure then is no different to now. It is left in the hands of big corporates, so the distributors, the supermarkets, some of the big food manufacturers like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Hungry Jack's, McDonald's. So they don't know how to grow food. They know how to distribute it. So we need to be looking at local and what grows locally and strengthening these organisations and so often community groups that have local knowledge, deep, sometimes multi-generational knowledge about what grows where and when. And if we had some financial assistance to enable this, we would have much deeper knowledge about how to grow foods, when to grow certain foods, what grows where, what's appropriate. However, we have a thing called big ag and big food and big finance. So the big finance is the banks. There's around $127 billion of debt in the rural sector, and 94% of that debt is provided by banks. So banks are very happy to have people in debt. We have big food, which requires the cheap commodity ingredients, which are provided by farmers who are price takers. So at the end of all this, it's the farmers who are at the arse end of the value chain, and yet they take all the financial risk, the weather variables, and have no capacity in a price taker market to add their costs of production into their final price. But this suits big food and big ag and big finance down to the ground.
I want to read you this. Now, this is a story from yesterday. We had the Olive Growers Association on. This little story: Health Star rating information will soon be compulsory on all packaged food in Australia. Unfortunately for the olive industry, the system fails to take into account the science-backed nutritional benefits of extra virgin olive oil, ranking it as a less healthy option than refined products such as sunflower and canola oil. What's your thoughts on that? Because it does seem, again, government has, I'll be polite, has stuffed up.
Let's ask another question. Who would benefit most financially by saying that olive oil is less healthy for you than sunflower and canola? As far as I know, extra virgin olive oil is never used in ultra processed foods. However, sunflower and canola oils are, and they're cheaper. Let's follow the money. So, who gets in to create these guidelines? And I know from experience over many years, the lobbyists representing very deep vested interests in big food. So this would, to me, would be coming from the big food side because they, well, I mean, they say margarine is better for you, a cocktail of chemicals, rather than two ingredients in butter. So who benefits from this? This is where we have to start asking really deep probing questions. and not just say, "Oh, the government should." Well, there are certain things. Yes, I think the government do need to change through their agencies, but follow the money.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and they're sneaky to the umpth degree, aren't they? I'd say other things, but because you and I are polite, and I'm on the edge of my seat at the moment. Could you tell us about actually before we get into that? So, what do consumers need to do when I'm a husband. When I go into the supermarket, I don't put a whole lot of thought into that because I'm thinking about inane things like football or something, or how to make the wife happy. So when you go into a supermarket and you look at the fresh food area, as an example, what should I be looking at? Because as I said before at the start of it, we look at the organic stuff, it looks dreadful. The blue tablet is required for them, and yet you look at the stuff that's just pumped out. It looks magnificent. So, what do we need to look for when we go into a supermarket?
Oh, my first piece of advice is don't go to a supermarket.
Look for the exit.
Don't go there for a start, but
Yeah.
find your local food hubs and talk to the people who grow the food. Now, we just not don't go there. So you've got an entirely different world of joy when you go to the farmers markets or growers hubs or community gardens, and you're going to talk to people who are really knowledgeable about food because they're passionate about it. If you want to talk football, don't talk to me. You go and talk to one of your mates who is on an equal knowledge level with you. That's where you get your jollies. And it's the same with food. I would say there would not be an employee in a supermarket who would know how to grow a lettuce. So why would you go there?
I totally agree. My wife doesn't know much about football, but she tells me, and I have to agree. So sometimes it doesn't follow suit. Can you tell me about the new eaters group?
The eaters, oh yes, this is very exciting. And I'm so pleased you asked that because what we're noticing more and more is the level of food literacy amongst people is absolutely this big, but it could be this big. What do I mean by food literacy? It is a knowing that it makes me laugh when I see potatoes in a store, not from my growers, but in a store. And there are two varieties. I'd never heard you sometimes see Tobagos, Pontiacs, and then you get washed and brushed. Well, I didn't know they were varieties of potatoes. So that's a literacy exercise. So if you understand the breeds of potatoes, it's like apples. So we need to name them, but we also need the literacy needs to be extending as to curiosity. Where are they grown? Are they in season? Who grew them? How were they grown? And to me, this is one of the most important issues. How many chemicals were used on them or not? How many herbicides have been used in that growing area or not? What sort of fertilizers were used in the growing of these products? Was it a synthetic cocktail or is the soil the basis of all the fertility and nutrient density those plants are grown in? A lot of people would roll their eyes and say, "What do you mean is nutrient density? What are you talking about? I've got a tomato here and I've got a tomato there. They basically look the same and what's called substantially equivalent, but the nutrient density, because of their growing conditions, will be vastly different."
Yeah, we used to live in Hawaii, just below Diamond Head, and every Tuesday they would have a farmers market in the car park, and just not far from where we lived. And it was absolutely delicious and fresh, and we knew there were no chemicals. But the other side of the coin was it was cheaper. Tell me before we wind this up, because we all think. I mean, if you look at the supermarkets, and again, just forgive my ignorance, but you pop down there, it's always expensive for that wilted piece of whatever whatever it is. The the farmers markets are great places to go to, but what about the cost to the consumer?
Ah, with supermarkets, because they do not price in their externalities. And what that is which goes down the chain to the producers. Supermarkets are not the nicest people to deal with in fresh produce. Because it's a perishable product, it can diminish its quality quite quickly. And then the growers are penalised. But I wanted, if I could make another point, please, Mike, is that Coles and Woolworths, 70 to 80% of the goods on their shelves are imported. Why? Because they're cheaper than what Australia can produce. So we need to ask if we're going to be duped, and a lot of the labelling on these products is fraudulent. And if anyone from Coles and Woolworths would like to take me to task, I welcome it, because they will not even address this issue. So we need to be, this is part of the food literacy again. What it might claim to be on a can or a bottle or a packet is not all that it seems. And we have so many instances of fraud, particularly in the organic sector, coming in to Australia claiming to be organic, and they are not. So people are duped. Supermarkets are going to do their big share of greenwashing simply to make money. That's what they're about. They're about profits, not the health of Australians. And they're a vital part of the entire distribution system of high processed foods. So for your well-being, and when did anybody ever ask you, Mike, oh, let's go and meet at the supermarket?
And no one.
They say, let's meet at the farmer's market and we'll have a coffee and a fresh pastry and some beautiful fresh sourdough bread and eggs from chooks that are out in the sunshine. So it's actually shifting the paddock between the ears. What's the thinking, our attitudes between our ears about what do we want for the future, not just in the next 10 minutes to make dinner. So it's up to the eaters to make the changes in their own lives. And then corporates say, oh, Jesus, they're not doing what we want them to do anymore. We have to do something different. So it's up to us. We really do have the power to make the changes. But if I can leave one message, please avoid the supermarkets and go to the independent traders, the independent butcher, the independent baker, the independent greengrocer, the farmers markets. Know where your food comes from, care where your food comes from, because that will make an enormous difference to your own health and well-being, but also our landscapes.
Yeah, if somebody wants to find out more, I've got that vision playing at the moment because I think it's fantastic. And it really does. It says a lot. A picture says 1,000 words. Tell us about, if we wanted to find out more about what you do and what your organisation does, how do we get in contact with you, and what's the website and stuff like that?
We have a crazy website. If you've got a pencil and a piece of paper, it's called Organic Investment Cooperative.com.au.
That's not so bad.
Oh, good.
I mean, after 3 or 4 attempts, it'll work.
Yeah.
You probably need to shorten it down a bit. Penny, it's a pleasure talking, and I would like to do more of these because I think as you said, we could talk for 3 hours. We haven't got that time at the moment, but we can space this right across. And I think you have some great information. Your background is just looking after the health and well-being of us mere mortals. And for that, I think you have immeasurable knowledge. And I would like to thank you for being part of our show and putting up with the stoppages. We couldn't do anything about it. We knew nothing about it. It's like, oh, wow, they didn't tell us. But we
There's
got
nothing like live TV.
it does. And I think being a weekend, I can see the Scottish way of making you healthier, and that's a whiskey. That'll be waiting
Yes.
for me tonight at about 7:30.
Yeah.
Have to wait that long. Penny, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mike.